Chapter 231. Refugees Inbound. Dominic put the enhanced garden wall at the top of his list, then decided that the next most important part would be the repairs to some of the houses in the village and nearby farmsteads. Farmers were their highest priority for residents, so he would put in the effort to ensure that they were catered to. It was getting late in the day, and Dominic was just finishing with the repairs to the 10th farmhouse of the day when he saw a group of travelers on foot approaching the village. They had an ox cart with them, full of what was likely their worldly possessions, as they didn't have any guards, and the state of their clothing did not give any impression that they might be merchants. So, he went to greet them. "Greetings. Welcome to the Westover ducal estate," Dominic called as they approached. "Greetings, Lord. We are refugees from Coster, headed for the Signia border. Might your lordship be so kind as to offer alms to the homeless?" One of the men asked. "If you're headed for Signia, you should know that the border crossed you nearly a week ago. All of Stantia province is now under the dominion of the Signia kingdom, though you are standing on the granted lands of Signia's newest duke," Dominic explained. The refugees looked around, seeing only a few royal guards moving around the village. "Pardon, my lord, but does your estate not have any peasantry?" Dominic shrugged. "There is one household so far. Once we had renovations finished, we intended to head for Coster and Limpsbury to incentivize a few more families to move. This estate had been abandoned since the end of the Dago's invasion." The refugees gave him a shocked look and answered instinctively. "Mentioning the transfer of power like that is treason. Don't let the nobles hear that. They'll flog you to death." Dominic laughed and patted the man on the shoulder. "This is no longer Dago's. This is Signia, and it is no crime to speak the truth. But you are looking for somewhere safe to settle, are you not? Do you have any skills?" The man looked back at his large extended family. "Well, I worked in a steel mill as a laborer, but my brother and his wife were sharecroppers. I see that there are some untended fields." The man answered, faint hope in his tone. Dominic nodded. "Indeed there are. If you're willing to learn from your brother, I have no problem allowing your family to move into this farmstead. Those 4 fields totaling 40 acres are attached to it. If you can work all 40 acres within half a year, you may remain as sharecroppers, and I will grant you tax amnesty for 2 years from the day you move in." "Is the house livable?" the man asked. "Indeed. I have just finished some repair work, and the entire contents of the house remain from the previous tenants. When this village fell, there were few survivors, and it has been protected from looting, so everything remains untouched. I don't know what you brought with you, but with an ox and 8 adults among you, I don't see why you couldn't do it. If you feel you can work more land, you can spread to a second farm. The farm equipment is still mostly intact, but the animals are long gone," Dominic offered. The man nodded to a young woman who was likely his wife, and she ran off to the nearby farmhouse. It was only 3 bedrooms, Dominic knew. It would be horribly cramped for the family, which was originally 3 or 4 branches of one family. But without the skills to work more land, or any other jobs available for them until there were more residents, it would be a shame to give away a larger farm, and a waste to put them unemployed in town. There are houses in town as well. But for now, there is no town population, no shops for you to work at. Until we gain skilled craftsmen, there is no need for town labor," Dominic explained. The oldest of the refugees, a wizened man with shockingly golden eyes, climbed down from the back of the cart and hobbled up to Dominic, using a walking stick for stability. "You are a Wavemates Dragonkin," he stated with absolute certainty. "Indeed. Dominic Wavemates, nephew of the former Earl of Westover under the Dragon King. Now Duke of Westover under the King of Signia, and returned to my home." The old man reached into his robes and took out a brass wand with a crystal set into a cage of wire. He pointed the wand at the sky and set up a golden flare into the fading twilight. "Stay outside for a few hours, my lord. The true citizens will come to the signal." The old man insisted, then broke into a coughing fit that caused him to crumple to the ground. "Grandfather, you are too weak to be using magic. I'm sure that the Lord didn't need your sparkles to celebrate our arrival," one of the younger women criticized. The old man waved his hands as he coughed. "I'm not celebrating, silly girl. That is a village guard flare. Anyone who served in the armies under the Dragon King will recognize it and know that we have found a friendly lord. We're far from the only ones on the way south today. We might have left late, but there are plenty of others who have been moving slowly, looking for safe haven within our own borders. Dominic picked the old man up and placed him back in the cart. Why don't I show you into your new home? It's not much, but it will do for now. If you want, I can even build a few more small houses to create a family complex. I have the magic to make the walls and roofing, and we have hired a skilled carpenter for the rest. The old man shook his head. We will deal with being cramped until we are settled. We have brought a large yurt, and that will do for the overflow of family members. I trust that a wavemates will hold to his word and let us stay while we fulfill the conditions of our residency. The younger family members nodded in agreement, though they didn't look as convinced. They were all children when the nation fell, and they lived in a major city, over 300,000 people, so they didn't ever actually have any personal dealings with nobles, unless they entered a shop they were working in. Chapter 232, Called to Rest. The old man's declaration that others would come to his signal proved true within the hour, just as Dominic was finishing with his efforts at helping the new arrivals assemble their yurt for extra space. A rider on an oversized plow horse, wearing a patched but formerly quality coat, approached the farmhouse, which now had a fire going in the fireplace, giving off a small plume of smoke to show its occupancy. "Hail to the rider," Dominic called, stepping outside to meet him. "Hail to the Lord. Did you set up the flare?" The rider replied. Dominic shook his head. "No. The family patriarch of my new sharecroppers did. I am Dominic Wavemates, Duke of Westover, where you are standing now. Are you traveling with a group?" Dominic asked. The rider nodded. "We have 50 refugees from near Coster. Farm folk, looking to escape the aftermath of the war. Are we in Signia now?" Dominic nodded. "You are. If you've got skilled tradesmen and farmers, we welcome them. Woodcutters and huntsmen as well." The rider smiled, showing teeth yellowed by years of smoking. "Well, that is excellent news. I don't suppose this little estate of yours has any security, other than a lord sorcerer and a company of royal paladins? Only a few household guards." The exchange brought out the old man from inside the house, and the rider's attitude immediately changed. "General Alater, you are alive. I thought that you had fallen during the Battle of Coster," he declared, hopping off his horse. "You foolish brat. You heard him say that he's a Wavemates Duke, and you're still thinking of having your so-called refugees try to rob him? That dragonkin alone would kill every one of you without taking a wound." The old man raged. The rider looked sheepish, and Dominic shrugged. The old man wasn't wrong. And now Dominic was not eager to let just anyone move in. "Your Grace, forgive my mistake. This guardsman knows he was wrong. The resistance lives, and we are at your service," the younger man pleaded, falling to his knees and bowing flat to the ground at Dominic's feet. "So, you've been resorting to banditry as you travel?" Dominic asked. "Your Grace, forgive us. The Duke of Coster burned everything when the Signia army approached. Our people were desperate. Bring them here, and I will judge them. If I think that they can reform, I will let them settle here. If not, they will move along. That's as much mercy as I'm willing to show, even for local resistance men." Dominic replied. "Are you truly Wavemates? No, you must be, with horns like that. How did you become a duke? Did you claim it for yourself?" The rider asked. "I was given the title as a reward for contributions during the war. It's a legitimate Signia noble title. However, what they didn't grant me was a population of locals. I'm not afraid to weed out the bad elements, but I will grant a single chance for those who want to live an honest life." Dominic relented. He got the feeling that this was going to be more hassle than it was worth. But what were a few dead bandits in the grand scheme of things? If he sorted the honest from the dishonest here, the cities further downstream into Signia would thank him. But there was no need to mention that. While they were talking, a young man on foot ran up to where they were standing, silhouetted against the night sky. "Someone set the guard flare? Did you find a friendly lord? Are we into Signia?" he asked. Dominic nodded. "Yes and yes. As long as your people are honest, we have honest work and homes available. I am Dominic Wavemates, Duke of Westover. The man gave him a military salute and bowed politely. Your Grace, greetings. I am Guard Captain Omar Khalil of Cosman. I have my entire clan with me. The Duke of Coster stripped us of our wealth and properties, but my family has many skilled men and laborers to work our estate. He replied. Dominic shook his hand. Bring your family here. We will work out an arrangement. If they are truly capable, I can set them to work 40 acres, and if there are too many of you for one farmhouse, I can offer a family compound in town as well. Thank you, Your Grace. I can see that Captain Bass has offended you, but I can vouch that before the fall of Coster, he was a reliable member of the resistance and a good man. Captain Khalil replied. Dominic sighed. I have reservations, but I will give you all a chance. You said you had 50 farmers from near Coster, right? Split them by families, and I will determine how much land they can feasibly work. I will offer assistance in that if necessary. We have one tractor at the house, but there should be equipment at all the houses if you have animals. The captain knelt again. Thank you, Your Grace. I promise we will prove ourselves to you. I will bring my group here first thing in the morning. Captain Khalil nodded. Mine are closer, just over the ridge in the trees. I waited to see who would answer the call before I moved. We have one steam tractor with us, but it's currently in need of repairs. I don't suppose you have a steamsmith. Dominic chuckled. His men were already into the overgrown farmland and had likely been foraging for food from the wild crops when the flare went up. I have some experience as a steamsmith, but we have a mastersmith with us as well. I am certain that we can get your tractor working again. Is it a larger model? Dominic asked. The captain nodded. It is. Close to state-of-the-art 10 years ago. Perfect. Then your family can likely work enough land to make a good living for themselves, beyond subsistence. This area doesn't get much foot travel most of the time, but we can work to change that once we have goods to trade to market. There is another hour or so before full dark, and there is a family compound that you can stay the night at. It should be suitable to move everyone into. Dominic replied. Thank you, Your Grace. We'll be back soon. Chapter 233, New Families. The Khalil family of Cosman had once been an illustrious and wealthy family, not quite nobility, but the next best thing. Now, their riches had been confiscated, and they had all of their remaining assets loaded into one large trailer pulled behind a farm tractor. But at least they had a pair of oxen with a merchant wagon to carry everyone, and the cargo trailer behind the tractor had a plow hooked to the back of it. They had brought the essentials to get restarted wherever they ended up, and Dominic was immediately impressed. The farms had serviceable equipment, but taking the initiative to bring the essential pieces to start a new farmstead showed that they didn't think they were above starting over from nothing with their own hard work and no handouts. Better than the ones who had immediately turned to banditry. Though, Dominic realized that he likely shouldn't judge them too harshly. Even when he had first come to Signia, he had been stealing from scrapyards to make ends meet. If the group coming in the morning were as good as the other two families said they should be, he would give them a chance to prove themselves. Dominic turned to the elder of the Alator family. General, it was a pleasure to meet you tonight, and I will come check on you in the morning. For now, I will escort the Khalil family to their new compound. Dominic led the large group assembled by Omar Khalil to a family complex at the edge of town that had once belonged to a wealthy merchant family, much like the new residence. It was made of 5 smaller houses arranged around a courtyard, allowing the branches their own space. They hadn't brought any dedicated household servants that Dominic could see, but with the mix of able-bodied men, adolescent boys, and entirely too many girls, they should be able to at least upkeep their own house. Does your family tend toward girls? Dominic asked as they pulled up in front of the complex. Omar chuckled. You don't know the half of it. These are just the ones that haven't been married out of the family. We've long had 3 girls to every boy. If we weren't smart at business, we would have been bankrupt just on dowries by now. One of the older men came out of the truck to shake Dominic's hand. Your Grace, it's a pleasure to meet you. I am Omar Khalil Sr., father of the captain and a skilled tailor. If you need any clothes made, let me know. We managed to salvage a small portion of the family's inventory before the shops were taken. He announced while also speaking with his hands. Well met, Lord Wavemates. The Merchants Guild welcomes you back to Stantia Province and appreciates your hospitality. Dominic smiled back at him. The ladies will be pleased to know that we have a skilled tailor among us already. While their needlework is exceptional, our staffing levels are not high. It's a pleasure to meet you as well, merchant. If you didn't hear, there has been a 2-year tax amnesty declared for those under my care. I look forward to seeing how well your family manages to establish themselves. The captain chuckled. I should have known that you would both be fast friends. If you come back in the morning, we will make sure that the other arrivals under Captain Brass behave themselves. We have worked together for nearly a decade now, as his village was not far from the city. If you send out a runner to the cities, I don't think you'll have a hard time finding skilled tradesmen. Many of the locals are still loyal to the true lineage, and they will happily come to live and work here. Dominic nodded. Well, I have a rather significant amount of land available and vacant. From what I remember, at least 4,000 of the 12,000 acres are suitable to either be worked or put to hay. That's 100 small farms, plus the village. Then there will be 20 barons appointed soon. The total vassalage covers 500 square kilometers. Dominic explained. The captain whistled in appreciation. It's a shame that none of us managed to impress the Signia nobility enough to be considered. But our families were military, and not noble to begin with. Just the peerage you've been given, with the magic in your veins, should be enough that you never have to worry about money again. That alone is a dream come true. Dominic laughed. We're just getting started. Signia is on the verge of a cultural leap from animal to mechanical labor. If I can find the blueprint or duplicate an existing tractor, I might be able to thoroughly change how farming is done here. The one that we have at the manor is on the smaller side, but with most families working 40 acres, it might be large enough. Assuming I can find steamsmiths to make us 100 of them in the next year. The patriarch of the Khalil family nodded in understanding of what Dominic wasn't saying. Find us someone to make tractors, and everyone benefits. Dominic explained the situation to everyone when he returned so they could be on guard against thieves. Hopefully, it would not be necessary. But when they had valuable equipment, a garden, and goats, there was no telling what desperate people would do. Fortunately, when Dominic woke the next morning to the smell of frying pork and eggs, there was no sign that the royal guard had encountered trouble.
Perfect as always, Beth.
Thank you. For breakfast. Pops, one of the new arrivals, has a damaged steam tractor they would like you to take a look at. They brought a plow with them as well, so if you can get their issues sorted out, they can start clearing land today. It was still running and driving, but I didn't have an opportunity to look into it last night. Dominic explained. That's not a problem. They must be the ones in town. I can see the tractor from my window. I will sort them out and put them to work. Pops agreed. Now, Dominic just needed to vet the rest of the arrivals. Chapter 234, Vetting Farmers. Dominic looked at the sad assembly of peasants in dismay. While they might have resorted to banditry to survive, they clearly weren't good at it. They were all in threadbare clothes, their packs were empty, and they were all hungry. They were clearly all farmers, as they had brought essential tools with them, including more than a dozen donkeys. Not as powerful as oxen, but good enough for a small plow and other farm equipment. Well, I had heard that you resorted to unsavory methods to survive, but you don't look like a bunch of hardened criminals to me. Dominic chuckled. One of the women, a thick-armed demi-human with the characteristic misshapen face that spoke of ogre heritage, chuckled. Near to wet myself when I heard that there was a dragonkin duke here. I thought the leader might be desperate enough to try something stupid. She insisted. A masked woman nodded in agreement. I am a garden witch of decent power, but fighting against a dragonkin? Even if we had 5 times as many, it would have been bad. Dominic smiled at the garden witch's inflection. She had a voice that sounded a lot like a child explaining a profound truth she had just discovered, and somehow that made Dominic immediately want to protect her, though she was clearly a grown adult behind the mask. A garden witch, is it? So you have nature magic? That will be very useful. He commented. She nodded. I can speed up the growth rate of crops, but I don't have the skills to create food from nothing. Dominic smiled. I will pay you well for your skills. Growing enough food for all the new arrivals will save us a huge amount of money. We have a good garden at the manor house, and many of the farm gardens still have vegetables coming in. Now, how many groups are there among the 50 of you? The masked woman turned and gestured for everyone to split up, then counted them on her fingers. Good with magic, not so good with math. There were 8 groups. Captain Wilkes came jogging over from the manor while Dominic was meeting with the group and arrived just as the garden witch finished speaking. It just occurred to me that these new arrivals might need healing. One of the boys went with Pops to meet the Khalil family, and they had some injuries. He explained. Dominic nodded, and the Royal Guard cast a large area healing spell over all 50 of the new arrivals at once. The masked witch touched her face as the spell finished, and Dominic saw her smile a little as it finished. The headache is gone. That is good. Not many days without a headache. She sighed. The big woman patted her on the shoulder and smiled at Wilkes. Millie's a good girl, but has the worst headaches that keep her from working most days. An injured horse kicked her in the head when she was young, and she's not been quite right since. That would explain the mask. All right, you have donkeys and labor. There are more than 8 fully stocked farmhouses on this side of town. Start here and work through the houses to my left. Only take the ones that are intact. We will fix the others later and assign the lands with them then. Dominic explained. Captain Brass gave Dominic a smart salute and bowed formally. Thank you, Your Grace. We won't let you down. Can we take one of the farms further out if they're standing? If my guard years are over, I wouldn't mind a side gig as a woodcutter. If there is one thing that the enhancement spell gems of an old guardsman are good for, it's moving firewood. Dominic chuckled. There will be a lot of work making roof beams as well. Many of the farms have Magitech stoves in them for heating and cooking. So, make sure everyone checks before they start loading wood in them. The farmers quietly celebrated their victory. If there was working Magitech in the houses, they might actually have improved their quality of life instead of starting from nothing with a struggle. Dominic and Wilkes watched as they inspected the various houses and kept moving past some that were intact. What do you think they're looking for? The Royal Guard asked. They're picking the ones with Magitech stoves and intact gardens. Not always both, but the ones they passed over didn't have either. Dominic realized. It was all a matter of priorities. What was going to be easier for their group? Getting firewood for the stove, or getting the garden growing again so that they didn't have to forage for food? Millie stayed with the ogre-blooded woman and her 5 sons, though they were clearly not kin. Before the others had even started to unpack their meager belongings from the donkeys, the garden witch was working her magic, and the garden was growing at a visible rate. Then, she simply toppled over and the rapid growth stopped. Wilkes sighed and cast a healing spell on her. She doesn't realize that she's about to hit her limits. Someone has to watch her, or she might accidentally exhaust herself to death. He whispered. I will sort it. Dominic replied. Millie, is this your family? He asked. The garden witch shook her head. Nope, but they're good to me. See, I fixed the garden already. Good to go. The matron gave her a sad smile and patted her on the head, while silently gesturing for Dominic not to say anything about the woman's mental issues. Would you like to come meet our gardener? She could use a hand with the manor's garden, and you wouldn't have to share a room with a bunch of boys. Dominic offered. It's a paying job as the gardener's assistant and the Duke's in-house garden witch. Our Tenna will keep her from overworking herself. Colonel Wilkes informed the older woman, who was looking protective. Millie smiled. A new garden? Okay, I will follow you. The matronly demi-human chuckled. Take good care of her. I've been watching over her since we left. Her family fought back against the lords when they razed the village. Her father was a pure-blooded elf, and his magic was incredibly strong. Shame he never learned to use it properly in combat. Dominic nodded. Don't worry, we will keep bringing her around to make sure everyone's gardens sprout properly. Chapter 235. 10 Farms. That made 10 farms occupied. They might have a long way to come before they looked like proper farms, but they now had real residents. We should let Larry and June know about the new neighbors. I'm reasonably sure I saw at least 3 pregnant women in the crowd, and June is a midwife. Dominic informed Wilkes. I will tell them now. I hear a tractor running, so Pops should be nearly done at the compound, and the princess wanted me to ensure that they found what they needed to get started breaking land before noon. She's supposed to have a magical conversation with her father sometime today, and the king will be very impressed if he learns that we've managed to make enough progress to settle refugees and break land for farms already. He explained. Dominic thought that they were doing all right just getting the manor house operational, but Wilkes had a good point. Being able to tell the king that they had settled refugees into long-term homes would help calm down some of the chaos in court. The border barons were mostly gone, and while Dominic's lands didn't extend east into the old Signia borders, someone was going to have to go take over all those estates that had been purged as traitors. Letting the king know that they weren't just lawless lands overrun with refugees would make it easier to send the right people for the job. Millie, would you like to come see the manor garden now? Dominic asked. The garden witch nodded happily and then waved goodbye to the others. Dominic looped his arm for her to take, and she skipped happily to the garden, where Tenna was picking vegetables. Tenna, I found you a garden witch. She needs someone to look out for her. She's got a head injury from a horse kick, and Wilkes healed her headache, but she's probably tired from overexertion. Dominic explained. Tenna nodded in understanding. She knew what a kick to the head could do to those who survived. The royal guard would have healed as much as he could, but head injuries were tricky. Would you like to help me weed the garden? I'm sorting the plants into 3 sections, so we have constant fresh vegetables.
Tenna explained.
Oh, I know how that works. I have good magic for removing weeds. It only leaves plants that are edible. Millie declared. Movement in the distance caught Dominic's attention, and he focused to see that one of the newly arrived farm families was directing a refugee group toward town. It looks like I've still got work to do. Who would have thought that lifting the curse on the area would have such an immediate effect? Dominic sighed. Tenna waved him away so that she could watch the child-minded elf work on removing weeds from the garden. Dominic met the refugee group at the edge of the village a few minutes later, and a muscular man with a Merchant Guild emblem around his neck came forward to greet him. Your Grace, it's a pleasure to meet you. The guild mentioned that you were moving in here. He declared. The Resistance lives. Welcome home, Your Highness. I have brought you skilled workers. They paid the guild to relocate them after the battles destroyed the cities to the north, outside the ceded area. Dominic nodded. That explained a lot. If the Merchants Guild was getting themselves involved, they would be using magical communication to let their people know where he was. There had only been a few days since the official announcement, and since he had told their branch where he was going. But there were also Merchant Guild members in Albrols, and they would have given the guild a warning that Dominic was about to receive a peerage. Welcome to Westover. I wish I could say that we were fully prepared to host you in style, but I do have a room at the manor for the Merchants Guild, and we can arrange lodging for the others, whether they are staying long-term or short. Dominic replied. I appreciate it. We need all the skilled hands we can get at this point. We got some farmers enough to feed the village, but we're short on everyone else. He signed back. Now, I think that I have just the right people for you. None of them were impoverished before the war, and they're all valuable assets to any lord. I have an innkeeper and his staff as well, assuming that you haven't found one. Then we have 3 techno-wizards, a steam fitter, an artificer, 2 tailors, 3 carpenters, woodcutters with draw horses and gear, and 2 steam tractors. Those are for sale by the guild, if you happen to have some coin. The merchant explained. None are criminals. All had good reputations checked before we left. Dominic smiled. That will work wonderfully for us. With all the traffic we've been seeing, we're going to need all the skilled Magitech specialists for certain. We do have an empty inn and a number of shops and homes for everyone else. Some of the shops are still complete with inventory, though it's a decade old and in questionable condition, but I'm afraid that the Dago's army burned down all the shops with Magitech visible in them. The tailors looked hopeful. We brought some cloth with us, but space is at a premium. Is there a tailor shop intact? I have some coin to purchase the shop and home. Dominic nodded. As we are establishing a new village, I am not charging for homes, but we can come to an arrangement for the shop and the inn. The King of Signia has declared a 2-year tax amnesty for us. So, you will have some time to make a name for your establishment without worrying about war taxes. The group began to celebrate, and the Merchant Guild member discreetly handed Dominic a piece of paper. Dominic unfolded it and saw that it was a list of what he had for sale, including the steam tractor that had pulled the convoy here. If Dominic's math was right, buying everything would leave the man with one horse to ride back home on. Chapter 236. Guild Proposal. Dominic nodded as he read the list. I think that we should discuss that in private. I have a proposal for you, but first, we should get everyone settled. I like to know where everyone has chosen to stay. The woodcutters are free to pick any of the intact houses near the tree line. Only one of them is occupied right now by our local healer and midwife. There are a number of farmers, and you will meet them later. But do let me know what shop you have picked. There are residences above all of the surviving shops, so please move in at the one you picked. The tailor is down the street on the left. The sign is still there. Originally, there was only one in town, so I don't know if you want to work together or open two shops in a small town. The steam fitter is next to the forge. There is a master smith and toolmaker in the forge. Say hello before you go rummaging next door, so he knows you're not a thief. For the artificer and techno-wizards, just pick anywhere intact and make it home. The majority of the new arrivals nodded in understanding, but one of the techno-wizards had questions. You are the new Duke of Westover, but who were you before? He asked. Dominic Wavemates, nephew of the Earl of Westover. I grew up on the outskirts of this very village with an artificer and a techno-wizard for parents. I am also an apprentice blacksmith, with some training in magitech weapon and orb creation. He explained. The techno-wizard frowned. I know that name. Where do I know that from? The artificer, a younger man who looked like he might still be a student, poked him in the side. This is Westover, he whispered.
Right.
Dominic Wavemates, the butcher of Westover. Well, now the Duke of Westover. No offense intended, Your Grace. The older man realized. It's good to be home. Dominic agreed. The Merchants Guild member smirked, and Dominic didn't miss the fact that the group was quietly celebrating the fact that he was an original Wavemates noble who hadn't turned his loyalty to Dagos. The tractor that Pops had been repairing trundled down the road past them, pulling a large plow. The sight made the steam fitter sigh in relief. The more steam vehicles they had in town, the better it was for business. Dominic and the Merchants Guild's courier waited while everyone spread through town, looking for a new home. After a few houses, the mood turned somewhat somber. Everyone had realized that the reason there were so many fully stocked and complete homes was because the last occupants had been killed defending them. Normally, that would be enough to keep the superstitious away from moving in at all. But the new lord was the one who had avenged his village, according to both the Dagos nobles who cursed him and the resistance members who praised him in secret as a folk hero. So, if he was here, and he had let the houses stay up, then it should be fine to move in. 15 minutes later, everyone had chosen a place, and the tailors had agreed to share one large shop. Not the previous tailor shop, which had apparently been partially burnt, but one that Dominic faintly remembered as a produce house. Now, how about I have a nice chat with the Merchants Guild about purchasing the goods they have sent my way? Please follow me into the manor, and we can have the staff bring refreshments. Julio opened the door for them as they approached, and nodded politely at his fellow Merchants Guild member before bowing to Dominic. Julio. Good timing. Can you get the maids to bring us coffee? The Merchants Guild has sent us supplies. He explained. Of course, my lord. The castellan bustled off, and the merchant gave Dominic a curious look. You managed to hire one of the guild's accountants as your castellan? Or head of staff? That is impressive. Dominic chuckled. It was a fortunate turn of events. There was no managerial position available for him where he was, and I made a decent offer for his services. One of the veiled maids led them to the secondary sitting room on the main floor, which was now spotless. The merchant smiled at her, recognizing the veil as part of the uniform from the VIP areas of the Merchant Guild facilities, and mistaking it as a show of solidarity between Dominic and the guild, and not a desire by the maid to continue to hide her face. She retreated to the corner of the room to wait for instructions, while Dominic sipped the coffee and took out 2 mana revolvers and a rifle. All were rare items. All were created at level 20. They were the finest of magitech items that he had remaining in his inventory, and the merchant's eyes went wide as he examined them. Now I see why you wanted to do this in private. That is your maker's mark, is it not? He asked. Dominic nodded. Indeed it is. I know that the steam tractors are an expensive product, but the rest of the goods should be relatively affordable. The merchant nodded. A steam tractor of that size was indeed valuable, even when it was a coal-powered version, like the pair that he had brought. The fact that it didn't require Magitech to build made it much more affordable, especially in Dagos. But still, it would be close to the value of the 2 revolvers for the pair. That Magitech rifle, on the other hand, was the sort of thing that any noble would kill to get their hands on. Having a single one of those 3 weapons given to the guards of a merchant guild caravan would virtually assure its safety, even in these perilous times, as long as you could find a skilled guard to wield them. So it was a trade that he could make. Chapter 237. Valuable Trade Skills. The merchant picked up the weapons one at a time and inspected them for flaws or defects, then set them back on the table with a satisfied nod. I will agree to this trade. It might take us time to find buyers for the weapons, but we certainly will find the buyers, and tractors are plentiful in our inventory. He agreed. If tractors are plentiful, perhaps you could arrange for a few more to be brought here? A machine that size will plow a 40-acre allotment in a morning, but we've got many more acres waiting for residents. Dominic suggested. If you can provide rare quality pistols for our coach guards, I can send you a new tractor every week. The merchant laughed. Now we're talking. Soon, we will have the techno-wizards and artificers set up to produce trade goods as well, and a steady stream of merchant guild traders would save them a lot of hassle getting goods to market. Dominic suggested. I was hoping you'd say something like that. But do you have guards to actually protect such a high-value community? Dominic shrugged. Not as many as I was hoping for, but we've got a few, and I believe that we might be able to recruit 1 or 2 more from among the peasantry. Once I am settled in properly and the basic renovations are done, I will send a hiring notice to get more. Actually, you can do that for me. I will write up a hiring letter with requirements, and I will give the Merchants Guild a finder's fee for every qualified man that they send with the referral letter. Up to the quota, of course. The merchant nodded. Of course. Finding the right talents for the nobility is a specialty of the Merchants Guild, just as much as finding the appropriate products. Dominic quickly wrote out the list of talents that they needed, then thought about the list for a few more minutes before adding 2 more items to the list. 1 cleric, if possible. 1 guild member for an official outpost, pending approval. The merchant nodded at the list, then smiled at the last 2. Those should be easy enough to find. But you have your guild member already. Though he's now in your employ, Julio is still qualified to serve as the intermediary for Merchants Guild matters. Finding a cleric won't be too hard. They're in hiding all over the country. It's kind of an open secret that the forbidden practices are still active all across Stantia province. Dominic nodded. In that case, it should be easy. Julio is the one who is assembling our list of necessities, as well as the shopping list for the manor. We didn't honestly expect to get most of it any time soon, but if the Merchants Guild is already sending convoys in our direction, he should have a list for you as well. Just common items that the household needs. The merchant nodded. How is your funding holding up? I heard that the king isn't allowing you to charge taxes for 2 years. Dominic shrugged. I'm good for a while, and I can hunt monsters to get cores for payment as well. But more importantly, I will start producing goods for sale. Even a single Magitech item of rare grade is enough to fund the basics of the estate for a year. The merchant chuckled. You've got a point there. Until the price of Magitech items comes down again, anyone who can and will make them will become obscenely wealthy. I'm counting on it. After all, who respects a duke who has to scrape together spare change to hold a banquet? Worse, who would respect one who can't host a proper banquet when the king starts sending barons to the lands under him? Dominic replied. That would never do, especially if they're freshly promoted barons from the younger generation. They won't have anything but military merits themselves, so they will definitely request loans from the duke to get their own estates in order.
Dominic had forgotten about that.
One of the essential functions that the upper nobles, who had lesser nobility under their oversight, was to ensure that the dignity of the nobility was upheld, not just by holding trials and sending lawmen as needed, but also by providing loans and sometimes even staff to assist the lesser nobles in times of need. The fact that Dominic had only been here a few days didn't change the fact that very soon there would be rural barons arriving with little more than the clothes on their backs to estates that might have only recently removed their former Dago's overseers. Everything that remained would be suspect, and the loyalty of any skilled household staff would be in question. But that was a tomorrow problem, not a today problem. The merchant packed up the weapons, and Dominic escorted him out to the village, then went to check on the Khalil family. They had many experienced businessmen among their ranks as well. "Mr. Khalil? Are you home?" Dominic called from the gates to the compound. "Your Grace, please come in. What brings you here today?" A young woman greeted him. "We had a visit from the Merchants Guild. If your family needs anything, you can still catch him before he leaves." I purchased everything that they had for sale, which didn't amount to much, except a large steam tractor and some household goods for the manor. But they also brought skilled workers to the village. "I remember that your family used to be businessmen. The town needs a mercantile store and an outfitter if you have someone qualified. If you have a manager but need workers, the Alater family on the farm northwest of here has experienced store clerks." Dominic explained. The young woman motioned for a teen girl and one of the older men who were watching from their windows to join them. "Miss Maisie is a wonderful baker and would like to open a bakery in town if there are people to purchase from her. Ravi was the manager at one of our mercantile stores until the day we left. He's plenty qualified to take over, though we're short on supplies," she explained. "In that case, you really need to catch the Merchant Guild member before he leaves." Dominic agreed. "Go, you're a good runner. Bring him over here, and I will see that grandfather gives you a bonus on your monthly allowance." Ravi instructed. The girl took off running, and the dark-haired man known as Ravi bowed politely to Dominic. "Your Grace." As she said, "I am Ravi Khalil, an experienced mercantile store operator. I would be glad to go back into business again, in the name of the Khalil family. It is family tradition that we keep our businesses in the name of the family, not individually. The profits are split by contribution, so all share in the good times and all share in the hard times," he explained. Dominic shrugged. "I'm not particularly concerned how you split the profits of the shop, so long as I get my taxes after the 2 years are up. But I will not give you any trouble about paying as a family and not individually." Chapter 238. Set a Schedule. The Merchants Guild member was laughing as he gave the girl a ride back to the family compound. "Oh, Master Khalil, fancy meeting you here. When did you arrive?" he asked. "Just yesterday. I hadn't been informed that the guild was coming to the Duke's estate, or that there even was one here when we left," Ravi replied. The merchant laughed. "I was made aware 2 days ago, when I was already on the road with the convoy. They hired a guild member, and that was enough for the guild to know where they were going. In that case, I look forward to continuing to do business with you. I will need an entirely new stock for the mercantile. Does the guild still have my inventory on file?" Ravi asked. "We should. If you have a list, I will bring it back to verify." Ravi sorted through his storage item for a moment, then brought out a binder. "Ah, there we are. The floor plan for the old store. This is everything that I will need. Enough to fill the shelves. I have enough coinage left, though some will be in monster cores." The merchant nodded. "That's not an issue. I can trade them insignia. I will have this sent with the next convoy. You found a good family. 10 years, no missed payments." The merchant signed to Dominic, who nodded in understanding. Clearly, Ravi didn't notice the hand gestures or understand them. But that wasn't surprising. They were not intended to be known by everyone. Not wasting time, the merchant bowed and departed, while Ravi shook his head in dismay. Abrupt as always, but he always comes through with the goods. He sighed. "I think that he's trying to get to an inhabited village before dark because he's riding without guards now," Dominic explained. "Oh, good point. What happened to the convoy?" Dominic gestured behind him. "I bought it all and hired all the travelers to work in town. Give it a day or two, and we will have some proper shops already." Ravi nodded. "Understandable. I think that the bakery will do good business. Everyone likes fresh bread, and I see that a lot of the shops are being cleaned and arranged by just one man, not a whole family. They're not likely to want to bake their own in the mornings or know how to make sweets. We brought plenty of supplies, and I think that I can work a deal with the farmers to get us some grain out of those wild fields. Is there a miller in town yet? Dominic shook his head. The mill is still standing, though. It's in the compound of the manor house, and Magitech powered. If you can get grain and need flour, just ask one of my staff and they will get it ground for you. I have a miller on the list of staff for the guild to hire for us. Ravi chuckled and stepped a bit closer to Dominic. Are you sure that the king will not be upset that you've got the Wavemates Resistance doing not only the hiring, but the supplying and most of the shop operations in your territory? He asked quietly. Dominic patted him on the shoulder. Now that I'm back, I don't see it being an issue. Well, he did see it being an issue, but not one that he couldn't handle. The whole point of the resistance fight was to get rid of Dago's nobles and restore the Wavemates' lineage back into power. As long as he kept any of them from getting ideas about declaring him a sovereign king of the region, everything should go smoothly. If they could find more Wavemates' blooded nobles to work as representatives, it would be even better. But Dominic was hoping that he would get a number of the officers from the Natural Sons Regiment as barons. That would be the very best outcome. Even though they weren't local, the residents might resist them at first, but they were loyal to Dominic and the princess. Once the locals knew that, they should stop giving them a hard time. Hopefully. Plus, if they got members of the regiment, they would come armed and they would be able to train guards to protect their estates using the Magitech weapons Dominic could provide. It would be an entirely different sort of defense force if all of the village guards had a sword and a pistol. That sort of military force would be enough to virtually end banditry in a territory, and they would be able to easily deal with most forms of wild monsters as well. The baronies were spread out, and there had always been a lot of wilderness in this part of Stantia province, with less than a quarter of the land being suitable for farming, and the forests growing unnaturally quickly. Dominic and the other locals viewed that as a blessing of life upon the forest, but when anyone tried to cut them down, they would find out that simply removing the trees didn't stop the forest from regrowing the first chance that it was given. It was easier to only work the portions of the country that were grassland. I will leave you to set up your shops. I need to go speak to one of our new residents before I return to the manor. Dominic explained. Of course, Your Grace. You said that the tractors belong to the duchy now. Is it possible to borrow them to open more land? We've got plenty of hands, and the other farms could use the assistance. Ravi asked. Of course. Send 2 men over and have them start assisting the other farms, either to harvest or to plow. There should be tools for both on most farms. Just find the best one that you can and return it at the end of the day. I'm sure your men know what to do. Dominic agreed. Then he headed for one of the shops that the techno-wizards had moved into. There were a few more spell effects that he needed. Chapter 239, Techno-Wizards. Hello in there. Might I bother you for a moment? Dominic called at the door of the closest techno-wizard shop. Of course. What can I do for you today, my lord? The young specialist asked. I am looking for a specific Magitech item. One to create coal for the steam tractors I just obtained. I could also use one that simply creates fire, but then I'd need someone qualified to use it operating the tractor. Dominic explained. Oh, let me ask next door. That is more his thing. He did a lot of work with the steam fitters and practical sorts. Most of my work was with the mages, so I've got more esoteric sorts of spells in stock. He explained. The techno-wizard who had moved in next door stuck his head out the window with a smile. See, I told you that there was a good reason to stick with the practical magic. He joked. Then he held up a small black gem. I don't have it as a Magitech orb, but I have Create Coal as a spell gem. If we need more, it's within my abilities to make them in both forms, but they take all day. And a full day of a techno-wizard's time was valuable. How much do you need for it? Dominic asked. Think of it as a welcoming gift, my lord. Spell gems cost nothing but time to make, and I'm glad to be here. Not as happy as I will be when we get some guards in town, but much better here than anywhere else that we might have ended up. He replied. Dominic chuckled. Yes, we do need some guards. There are royal guards at the manor if things get bad. They're not lawmen, but they'll watch out for the village when the Duchess comes out. The techno-wizard nodded. And might I ask, who is your wife? Princess Alexis Cygnus, the younger twin princess and royal paladin. The sound of crashing let Dominic know that the man behind him had dropped whatever he was holding, which made him smile at the shocked techno-wizard. Yeah, that is the usual response. I married way above my weight class, but don't tell her that. The two men shook their heads in unison. That's not it, Your Grace. We just didn't expect that we would end up at a royal estate. Perhaps this is fate, leading us to the perfect spot to start over after the war? If anyone can build a true home for techno-mages and other magic users, it would be yourself and a princess of Signia. Dominic nodded. It must have been hard the last decade. Or were they at least pretending to get along with other magic users so that they could advance their magitech? The two men both shook their heads. No, the Dagos nobles treated us like some sort of criminals on a work program. The people are still the same as they always were, at least in private, but the penalties for being seen to support unlawful magic users and non-humans were so stiff that nobody dared to speak up for any sort of magic. Why risk the local lord accusing the techno which you hired of being a demi-human using banned magic, and having him execute your whole family for harboring fugitives? It's been tough. The Merchants Guild knows who we are, but for the most part, techno-wizards have just been claiming to be artificers or second-hand goods dealers. Everyone loves magitech, so if you just claim you bought it for resale, it's all good. Dominic sighed. I know that the king intends to replace the upper nobles that survived the war, but I can't say for sure whether they will try to grant some sort of amnesty for the barons and knights. Some might get leniency, but I am hoping that most are evicted back to Dagos territories so that the Stantia province can recover. The techno-wizard who had given him the create coal spell gem chuckled. Well, it has already recovered to some degree. There used to be a curse on this area so strong that refugees trying to get to Signia would more often end up in Midfield than Signia. Hundreds of kilometers off course. We were expecting the same, but we made it all the way to the border without anything strange happening, or our people losing their minds in terror. Dominic shrugged. Signia sent soldiers through here, and it wasn't an issue. So, I can't claim that it was my doing. But there was magic on this estate that had to be remedied before anyone else could move in. The techno-wizard shrugged. Signia sent through units led by paladins. They can just cast a spell and cleanse the taint from their soldiers. That's how they made it to Coster and Limpsbury. Let me tell you, the nobles were shocked to see them coming too. For 10 years, nobody came across this portion of the border. Nobody. Dominic chuckled. Well, that explains the condition of the roads on our way up. I knew that the area was abandoned, but I didn't think that it was going to be this well preserved. The dishes were still on the table in most of the houses when my team arrived and started to clean up. The techno-wizard shrugged. I can't say that I mind. The place might need a very thorough cleaning, but I can see where you patched the bad mortar on the walls. It's solid, it's warm, with a magical stove. Not much more a refugee could ask for. Plus, it came with a full set of housewares, and even the mattress won't be bad once I beat the dust out of it. A bit funny smelling, but I got a spell for that. Dominic laughed. Well, if you've got a spell for cleaning houses, you could make a small fortune in favors owed when the rest of the town starts showing up. Or I could hire you to clean, but I can't afford to pay more than a cleaner's wage at the moment. The techno-wizard shook his head. Nothing's so grand. Just one to nullify sense. But that will help with the sleeping situation, and a day's worth of airing out will do even more. I just wish that we'd thought to bring along a family with daughters. Teen daughters are always willing to clean houses for a day wage, and then I wouldn't have to do it myself. Chapter 240. The Right People. You could always try the Khalil's place or the Alater family. They're on a farm outside town, and the retired general's family didn't have much of anything when they arrived. I'm sure they'd appreciate a bit of coin, or whatever you could trade them to make life easier. Dominic suggested. Wonderful idea. I'm sure they've got plenty to do on their own, but soon enough we will need shop clerks and cleaners all over Westover. Just you wait. Once the Merchants Guild gets to work, they'll have more people here than you know what to do with. He replied. That will be a wonderful thing. Then we will just need to rebuild the road back into Signia. And perhaps see if the old road to Coster even still exists. The techno-wizard shook his head. It doesn't. We tried to follow the road, but it's all overgrown, washed out, and in a couple of spots there were recent battles, so it's blown to bits by cannon fire. You would do better trying to rebuild a road to Castle City or up towards Staptentave, where the main highway crosses the border. Either one would open you up to trade, but going to the main highway would be much shorter if you're hiring someone to do it. Dominic nodded. It would have to be a project for much later. My duchy ends at the old border and runs into Stantia province. But it doesn't extend to any major road, so I would have to work out a deal to improve roads across many territories or pay for it all out of pocket. Realistically, it would be better to focus on the river for transport. Coster and Limpsbury are both huge cities. Even now, after the war, and with the tens of thousands who fled for safer homes. You could build toward one of them, as well, if you're starting from nothing. It's not like there are any nobles between here and there to stop you. Well, there were once you get 200 kilometers from the border. But for the first part, it's not an issue. It was a fine reminder of just how rural they were. No matter what major city they wanted to build a developed road to, it was going to be close to 400 kilometers. However, they were right on the Westoverk River, and that ran within 100 kilometers of Coster, then all the way past Castle, Darden, and Skypington, before emptying into the Kilksea Lake. From there, goods could move by road, or continue by river to Signia City. That would be the best option, though getting the river barges back upriver would be a slow process, and the towns along the way were all overrun with refugees at the moment, unable to buy much. But 2 years from now, that should no longer be the case. Developing the town was a long-term goal, not just a reason to fill vacant homes. He had to make sure that they had everything that they were going to need, and that they would have it in abundance. I don't suppose that you have the clay to copper spell, do you? I prefer a cauldron-style pressure cooker to make jams and jellies, but mine was damaged in the move. The other techno-wizard asked, "How do you even damage a copper pressure cooker?" Dominic asked. The man took out the small pot, and Dominic chuckled. There was a very clear crack in it, along the line of a deep gouge that had to have been made by a sword or other bladed weapon. I see now. Sure. Give me just a moment, and I will have that as good as new, then you can paint new enamel on the inside. Dominic agreed. It didn't take much to press some wet clay into the gap and smooth over the damaged section, then fix the pot as good as new. It wasn't enamel-lined, which startled Dominic, but if the man had been using it all his life, it was probably safe. There you go, all ready for jams and jellies. I take it that is a particular hobby of yours? Dominic asked. Once upon a time, I thought that I might be able to woo a baker's daughter. It didn't work out, but in the process I learned a lot about making preserves and baking bread. The techno-wizard replied with a shrug. Then he handed Dominic a small blue gem. My welcoming gift to you, your grace. It's a spell gem of transmutation. It will turn an equivalent volume of something into solid stone. Admittedly, not the most practical item in the world, but given that you are a duke with a territory to improve, you can use it to improve roads and turn earthworks into stone walls. He explained. Dominic smiled. This will likely become everyone's favorite spell when the wet season's rain start. The main streets in the village are stone under all that dirt, but the side streets aren't, and there never was a proper road in and out of town. Once they started getting barons moving into the nearby territories, it would save everyone hours of travel time if he could improve the road between manors. He would have to ask Alexis how many people the area could comfortably support so that they didn't accidentally bring in too many people just because there was space. But other than that, they were getting well equipped for the first influx of residents. All right, I should go load the tractors with coal, and then I need to check on the rest of the villagers. Have a pleasant day, gentlemen. All 3 newly arrived tractors were out in the fields already, and the smaller Magitech tractor was baling hay by the manor. It almost looked like they had been here for years, with so much productivity. You just had to ignore the fact that all the fields that hadn't been plowed were overgrown. Dominic stopped as he heard activity in the smithy and saw Pops making tools over the aging stone forge. Need anything? He called.
Coal.
Come give me some before you leave. I heard the old man tell you he had a spell gem for it. Pops called back. For someone who spent his life in the forge, surrounded by ringing hammers on steel, his hearing was uncanny.